Welcome everyone, first of all. And today, the talk so far had been mostly on the development pipeline of things. Today we have a very interesting and exciting topic, I must say. We have Nate. Nate is a seasoned game marketing professional with over 20 years of experience in the industry. He has successfully launched and marketed over 40 titles across diverse platforms and market segments. These include AAA, mobile free to play, and some independent releases as well. He has recently founded Skilltree Marketing, where he and his team are actually leveraging AI for game marketing, and we are all here curious to learn more from you, Nate. So, without further ado, the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro. 20 years in the business. I started out at Ubisoft. I've worked at EA, WB Games, Amazon Game Studio, a couple little guys, and finally I left WB back in March and started. John Hansen is the founder and brought me on board as the co-founder of Skilltree Marketing, where we've been trying to apply everything we've learned in our combined 35 years to serving clients in the indie space, but also all over game marketing, all over the games industry. And so this is going to focus mostly on the creative aspect of how to leverage AI. But so typically, like a lot of things, time and money are the big constraints on the process. And I'm not going to go into detail on this slide. I was debating actually showing it, but this is kind of an overview of the marketing process for games and probably for other things. And in my experience, there's a lot of time. It's variable, but there's a lot of time investment in these phases. Up front, you're doing things like, I mean, depending on the game and the budget, but sometimes primary research like focus groups and surveys and forecasting, audience insights, all of that to inform, how are we positioning the game? Who are we talking to? What are the right messages to reach those people? Budgets, media plans, and then ideation, design, all the rest of the work, and then finally executing. But for today, I really want to focus in on creative. One interesting side note is I've noticed that when we talk about AI, like when we mention AI to clients, usually creative is the only thing they think, like that's where their brain goes. They think, you're using AI to generate ads or images, creative, which is interestingly not what we're doing. That's actually the one area that I don't, I don't love AI for, because I think there are IP issues and also just quality issues. I don't think that, from what I've seen, AI is capable of producing the level of quality of ads that I would want to put in front of clients. But I'll get into that in a sec. But I do think AI can help in a lot of these areas. I'm just only going to talk about creative today. So I picked this as, could have picked a lot of different ads, but same point, which is, ultimately marketing is about creativity, right? And it's about coming up with a message that is the right message for the right person at the right time and also comes across as authentic. It's not very easy. It's deceptively hard to actually come up with an ad that resonates and that actually is memorable, as opposed to easily forgettable or laughable even. And so that's, AI does not replace that creativity, but it can change how that does, in fact, for us, change how that loop operates. And so this is, an approximation of the creative process. We start by brainstorming concepts. We kind of refine or reduce that number and draft and start to execute specific concepts from the initial brainstorm. We sometimes test, sometimes not, depends on the game. If it's a mobile game that has kind of an evergreen ad campaign with it, then we would A/B test. If it's a AAA game, for example, or something that's going to release in the future, we can't always A/B test that easily because, or we'd have to focus group basically because it's not public yet, or there's not really an easy way to do that unless there's budget. But sometimes we test, and then we refine and continue the loop. So that high level approximation of what we're doing. With AI, it's the same steps, but different levels of AI input, at least again, in our experience, here's how we're using it. So with brainstorming, the humans, we're providing the parameters, like what is the brand positioning? Who are the personas we're talking to? What are the, basically what are the major inputs, which would be the things from the early step of the marketing flow I showed earlier, to give it, guardrails and generate. And from there, we generate a huge list, and we go through the humans and curate and figure out which ones we like and which ones to move forward with. And then, you know, we're designing it ourselves though. The draft phase, I mean, I guess this isn't the most perfect representation, but here there would be a design phase that is humans. Like we're using AI to refine the list, come up with scripts, for example, if it's going to be a video ad, and then reviewing those, editing them as we see fit, because they're usually not ready to go as is. They always need a little adjustment. And then we're designing them ourselves. We have a creative director, or we're outsourcing it to other creatives, but always created by humans. And then testing, like I said before, limited AI in my experience for the testing phase. I'm sure there's stuff out there, but we're not using it. We're finding that it's actually not even relevant a lot of the times, because the mobile game we're working on, we just throw ads out there because we have good enough sense of what's going to work that I'm not worried about a total failure. I'm curious how things work versus what's been out there already that we've made, and that's been working well. And then we refine as a completely human-led activity. So, and this is rushed. This is 10 minutes is short, guys. But on the left side is what I think humans are best at, and I think is going to be really hard for AI to replace. So a lot of it boils down to judgment, storytelling instinct, cultural context, brand judgment. All three of those are kind of in the same category of like taste. Like AI doesn't necessarily have good taste or necessarily know what good taste is. It takes a little bit of gut instinct, a lot of pop culture knowledge, understanding what's in the zeitgeist, and what's come before it, and in terms of video game marketing, and understanding the audience, and really integrating all of that into judgment and taste. And that is not an easy thing for a computer, I think, to understand or do well reliably. And then strategic definition and curation. So yeah, although we might rely on AI to help us come up with the strategic definition, heavily edited and moderated by us, we're ultimately the ones judging and curating which are the concepts that are worth producing, and of course, designing it. I mean, I know that a lot has been made of generative AI visuals, but like I said, I don't think they're very good. I think I've seen some cool images. I just don't think they're good enough as ads. And maybe we'll get there, but for now, I feel very strongly about having a designer actually design everything we do. And then for AI, where we've been leaning on it a lot in the creative process, is ideation. I think it's great for coming up with lots of different concepts and concept buckets. Like it'll take our messaging and our personas and say, these three themes are great for your persona A, who's like a gamer who's looking for such and such type of gameplay and has these kinds of psychological motivations. And then these three buckets are good for your persona B, for example. Really good at that, I think. Again, I would always plan to like edit it yourself. That's what we do. But I think for like initial ideas, it's great. Copywriting also, it does a pretty good job. I would say that, more than 50% of the copy that it comes back with is, worth considering. Still a lot of editing happens there, but it's surprisingly good. I don't know if we'll ever hire a copywriter, to be honest. Like, I mean, I'm a decent copywriter, but I wouldn't have kind of hung my hat on it. But with AI as having my back, I feel like I can do all the copy we need. And to inform what we're doing, the market research. We actually lean heavily on AI for helping us think through personas, to understand who's gonna resonate with the game based on what psychological needs are, part of the gameplay loop. And so zooming out, like this is kind of how the creative process looks for us with the partnership between human and AI. In the initial phases of planning for a go-to-market or a campaign, there's a human-led strategy and briefing phase where we're using that judgment and defining the goals, essentially the guardrails for AI. Then we have an AI kind of led phase where a lot of options get generated and we're curating those options and refining them. And then finally, when relevant, we're testing, interpreting results, sometimes with the help of AI. That's kind of the high level process. And because this is so short, this is my last slide. We believe strongly that it's a partnership between the two, and I'm sure this is conclusion been reached by many people, but this is I think AI on its own is far, far, far from being something that you can just plug something into and rely on the outcome being just usable as is. We spend, the majority of our time with AI is after AI has generated an answer and is, kind of making sense of the answer and how it fits in and editing it down and making it make sense. I mean, make sense in the context of what we're doing and, filtering out any kind of hallucinations or, other problems. So I'm supposed to open up for questions now. So should we do the Q&A?
Yeah, so thank you, Nate, for the presentation, and we should open the floor for any questions.
I'm curious if we have any game marketers here, by the way, besides like the people like from my team.
I
We do
am.
have,
I'd
Hey,
request
Nagar.
if you could stop sharing screen that way.
Yeah,
You have.
totally. Yes.
There we go.
Hey, Nagar. Nice to see you.
Do
I
have
didn't
a
see you.
question for you. What kind of AI tools do you use for market research?
So two things. We tend to use Gemini and ChatGPT, but we use them in a specific way. With Gemini, we use Google AI Studio most of the time because it has a million token context window. So it can hold a lot in memory, basically. And we tend to create a thread in there and just come back to that repeatedly for a particular client. So if we have a new client, we'll start using it, and everything we do will go back to that thread, and it has all the context from the previous questions, and we'll just continue, using that, and it gets kind of smarter and smarter. But then we use ChatGPT to fact check. So we'll frequently do, for example, deep research on both, on Gemini and on ChatGPT, and then use another prompt to compare those two to see if they agree, like where they agree and disagree, and then we kind of like resolve those conflicts. Like we look into wherever there are differences and try to understand where the differences are, and then finally we'll do another pass to kind of synthesize the two separate deep research reports into kind of one cohesive document. And we often use that as the basis for a lot of the strategy work. So essentially not one tool, but multiple tools and like sort of fact checking each other.
Got it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, totally. And Google AI Studio is amazing if you haven't used it yet.
Yeah, I haven't. I will.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Please go for
Yeah,
it.
so one of your slides is talking about the testing is done by human resources, and that was really interesting because there are a few startups in ad tech. They're claiming that optimization can be done by AI. So by applying multiple TNDs and different creatives, essentially trying out like brutal force style, combination, and AI is magically, optimizing the performance. So have you tried that? And what is your general perspective on that AI-driven ad optimization?
Okay. At WB Games, we did something like that. We didn't use AI, but we called it a bandit simulation or a Monte Carlo. It's also called a Monte Carlo simulation, where you're kind of doing like all the permutations. I mean, all like a bunch of permutations at once of something and seeing kind of what pans out and then optimizing from there. It's just like a brute force approach, kind of what you're describing. So my hesitation with using but in that case we did all the variations ourselves. Like we designed everything. Like we came up with, I forget how many, but just a bunch of different variants, and we tested them all, in A, B, C, D, parallel test, and saw what worked. And we actually found that was a very effective, albeit like work intensive way to approach things, but good, fast insights. My thing with AI would be, like I said, I have a hesitation about AI being able to produce like good quality like reliably good quality ads. Like I would want to carefully oversee what creative was coming out, assuming AI was producing all of the creative that's being tested. But assuming that was fine, like assuming the creative was good, either because AI generated good creative or because we reviewed it and verified that it was good and made sure it was, solid. I think it's a fine way to operate. I mean, I think like it's I'd like to say that like it's just all marketing experience alone that results in great ads. And I do think judgment is important. But at the end of the day, a lot of times little things that don't necessarily seem to me like they should make a big difference kind of make a big difference. Like moving, changing a color of something or moving an element within the ad or or changing copy, certainly. And so because of that, I think that it's worth doing testing a lot of things. And so I would say that it's worth looking into that if you've got the bandwidth to make sure that the art is good. Uh, In fact, I'd love to hear what the name of that startup is if you remember, because I would like check it out myself. But that would be my concern, is just making sure that the output is good visually.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
I guess, John, you've raised your hand if you have a question.
Yeah. I'd love to get a prediction from you as to where you think that AI tools in marketing is going to be in 2026. What do you think the next big sort of wave looks like for that?
Let me make sure recording is on. It is. Okay, go ahead.
In 2026, I think it's maybe too soon for AGI. I don't know. I'm actually not following that so closely, the AGI thing.
You're playing it too safe, Nate.
All right.
Go a little
We
more
will reach
specific.
AGI. No, I can't pretend to. I haven't been following the AGI thing closely lately, but I mean, look, it's been getting like just in the year since I've been working closely with AI, the improvements in image generation have been massive. Like just a year ago, every image I created, like the text was gobbledygook. It was, and the fingers were a mess and all those things. A lot of that has gone away. So, I think that in a surprisingly short time. So I would not be surprised if by 2026, image generation is like seriously like a notch up, like an order of magnitude, maybe even better. And so maybe I'll be eating my words about AI actually generating ads. That being said, I'd still be worried about IP issues, and so that's something that I'll asterisk. That I'm not sure how they can manage that. So I would say image generation much better, maybe fewer hallucinations. I mean, I think incremental progress for sure. Yeah, I mean, that's all I can say for sure. I think incremental progress for images and then in general, but like a step change aside from images, I guess we'll have to see. I wish I had a better prediction, but I mean, I think that like it's moved fast and I expect it to continue moving fast. And so, yeah, the images is the biggest thing for me because that's the biggest gap today.
Zoom organizes us now when you guys start raising hands to when to go now. I'm
Meaning,
redundant, given some automation, but Ayan, please go ahead.
yeah.
Thank you. I'm actually kind of curious. So since you're using AI in multiple phases of your marketing process, what are your kind of benchmarks for like impact and value? Like how does an organization, like, are you just, how do you know you're not just spinning your wheels or like, are you actually have targets and measurable sort of outcomes that you're looking for?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Usually the two things. If the game is not out yet, so if it's pre-release, we're usually measuring the KPIs are often like wish lists or other measures of intent. It used to be pre-orders. We haven't really done any physical retail games lately as a company, but so the equivalent to pre-orders is wish lists essentially on Steam, and that kind of metric. It's not the best though, because the conversion from wish list to sale is highly variable, but it's unfortunately one of the better metrics we have. Once the games are out, the metric that we're looking at is sales. So we're so absolutely tying to sales. And in the case of mobile games, where it's an ongoing thing, it's conversions. We're looking at click-through rate for our ads, and then ultimately conversion to install, and then stickiness after the fact, like retention. So it's yeah, purchase intent pre-launch, and then actual sales and retention post-launch.
So is it like as you're integrating these tools into your processes, are you looking at like time to new creatives? Are you looking at or number of iterations or successive iterations, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, we're just starting to get our heads around this, but yeah, we've implemented a process where we're timing all of our tasks, our creative tasks, like a stopwatch almost, but built into Asana. And the idea is that we need this both for estimating our own bandwidth so that we don't overcommit and we know that we're taking on like an amount of work that we can handle, or if we need to bring on resources to handle it, but also that can dictate our pricing because we can't, well, that's going to have a huge effect on how we price our services. So yeah, we're carefully watching that, and then the intent is that we'll get better as we get more data on, because it's variable. The amount of time it takes to make a video ad can vary, or a trailer a lot even. So there's going to be some initial kind of I would say like inaccuracy that's going to hopefully get evened out as we get more data.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Josh and then John again. So Josh, please go ahead. By the way, don't we have the same order of hands of Zoom for everyone?
I don't see an order. I just see hands.
Yeah, but I guess
Who do you see first, Josh or John?
It's Josh. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah,
I lowered mine and raised it again to test the theory as to whether it's a FIFO queue.
Yeah, why are you tricking me here, man? I'm like, first one, when I look up. Josh, it's all yours. Please go ahead.
Hopefully you can hear me. My voice is still getting over COVID. One of the hot topics that I've seen trending recently is actually using AI to construct synthetic users to test ad efficacy. So you could actually do a prediction on what your CTR and your CPI might look like given a given ad campaign for a given target demographic for a target video game title. What is your experience with working with that particular technology?
I have yet to do that. I've used LLMs to generate estimates of ad effectiveness, which is maybe the same thing as saying generate a synthetic user and like model like what they would, how they might click on the ad and generate that, but I haven't done it in that way. So I find that intriguing. I would be super curious to test it. If you know of any tools, please like email me or contact. I'd love to hear about what those tools are, or whether you're just using like ChatGPT or Gemini, like general purpose LLMs for that. But I'd be really curious about how that works.
Because as I'm sure you're aware, you realize that most of the foundational models actually have a cutoff date for the training data. So unless you've actually named the tool chain so you can do Google search or whatnot, it's going to have a data cutoff that might actually affect your results as well.
Yeah, I think for ChatGPT it's like 2024, mid 2024, something like that. Yep. That is a limitation, and that's a huge limitation, obviously, that we run into. When we're looking for current data, it's LLMs are not the way to go. For
John.
Yeah.
John.
So kind of following up on my my last sort of question and thinking about it a little bit more. I remembered I saw something this week and I had to go check it out on LinkedIn. The chair of the IGDA Finland wrote a sobering post about how it talks about the latest Finnish games industry saying, 270 studios exist in Finland now, which is a record. But he puts that in the context of the fact that many of these studios exist because of layoffs and not because of growth. Profits have been halved and turnover has shrank, and investments in the game industry has fallen from 300 million plus in 21 to 22 to 128 million in 23 to 24. So with that and the number of studios dropping that have cleared 1 million in turnover from 45 to under 40, it means that it's really hard for studios right now to succeed. And this isn't really a question so much as a statement. It's really interesting to see folks who are doing interesting experiments with AI tools to help and preserve capital and build efficiency into their processes, like you guys are doing as a practice. And I think that we're going to see more of that in the coming year. and people trying to find ways to say, okay, here are some tools that exist. You know, I sat down and I built an end-to-end website for doing math stuff for my teenage daughter. In 21, 22, that would have taken me 6 weeks and $30,000 of contract labor. I did it in 10 hours of part-time prompting and $20 worth of credits, right? Seeing the structural change in the amount of work it takes to generate a positive business outcome with these tools is going to make it, you know, an interesting transition into smaller, more efficient teams like yours, and fewer, you know, large scale, big budget firms being responsible for doing all of the UA and creatives and these things. So it's really awesome to see.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna revise my previous answer. I think that with AI in the future, I think what we're gonna see is broader adoption, because
Yeah.
I think people are just, in marketing at least, from in my experience, like anecdotally, it is not pervasive yet. I mean, it's like everyone's like played around with ChatGPT or whatever, like maybe another model, but I don't necessarily see it built into everybody's workflow from a marketing perspective. Like I know at WB, for example, there was a lot of legal hesitation, probably due to the actors strike, and you know, there's like some very highly publicized incidents that could understandably make them hesitant, and they've got a lot to lose. But my point is, for whatever reason, be it legal hesitation or just unfamiliarity and like newness or whatever, I don't think it's really pervasive yet. And I think as it becomes pervasive, it's going to have, you know, increasingly, you know, impactful, you know, effects on the industry. And so, to your point, John, yeah, I think that it's like harder than ever to break through in the games business. The numbers, last I checked, are staggering. The number of new releases. I think on Steam there are tens of thousands a year now, and on mobile there's hundreds of thousands of new releases a year. So it's just staggering to try to break through. And so I think with budgets being tight, which is what we're seeing, like to your point about Finland, it's as important as ever to really try to figure out, like, cut the fat and figure out like what are the most highly leveraged things we can do with our limited marketing dollars. If you're asking, do I think AI will eventually be able to do the visual creative? I think so. I think it's going to get, based on the improvement we've seen in the last year, I think there's a good chance that it will get there, but my concern would remain IP issues, like making sure that AI can generate imagery in a way that doesn't violate intellectual property, and obviously is like fresh and interesting and, you know, resonant, not just like avoid legal pitfalls, but actually can produce like clever, sharp art. Chandler.
Yeah, just really quickly, kind of along some of the same lines of like the human element of marketing. Reason I got into games marketing in the first place is the human element, that it's essentially about psychology and human connection, which we've seen a lot with LLMs, where people are trying to use it for therapy and things like that, and it's just like either not working, or the hallucinations, or it's not just inherently human. It's still a robot ultimately. So I guess the question is, where do you think there's a hard line there, where human psychology and human connection kind of overtake all else, like no matter what else? And it seems it's kind of a leading question for you, because it seems like your presentation was going into that essentially anyway. But yeah.
If I understand your question correctly, like therapy, for example, like, I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the headlines about people, like, you know, befriending an AI, like basically getting therapeutic help from a chatbot, and then in some cases it ending in tragedy and like suicide. And it's like, I I would really think that a human judgment in the loop there makes a lot of sense. You know, I mean, as someone my mom was a therapist, so I mean, I grew up like with therapists my whole life and going to therapy because my mom believed in it and I believe in it. So, and I was a psych major in college, so I mean, basically like all wrapped up in that. And yeah, I don't really trust the machines, you know, on this. And like, it would take a lot of convincing me otherwise, you know, because I think, while even if 99% of the time it can give good advice, it's that 1% that I'd hesitate. And so with something as potentially, you know, I mean, assuming your question was about therapies, but I mean,
No. More
than that?
that was more the example leading into like just marketing in general. Again, marketing is very like you said, it's kind of that gut instinct of like the human instinct is going to know what's good for a copy or an ad video or even just a screenshot of what's going to look good and what's going to work for a particular game. Like, is there a hard line where it's kind of like we're always going to need a human eye on this to say human is connecting with human to do this
yes,
thing.
This was in my deck, and I do think that's the case, is that like human judgment and like taste is going to be really hard to replicate, because AI is necessarily of the past, right? It's scraping the past to generate, ideas. And in fact, a year old, as Ian pointed out, or as Josh pointed out, someone pointed out, right? And so, the job with marketing isn't just to like regurgitate the past and come up, try to come up with something. It's kind of an integration of what came before it, some maybe what's in the zeitgeist, new ideas, maybe, and it's kind of a synthesis of a lot of things. And I just don't see AI making that leap anytime soon. I mean, it would be foolish of me to say never, because who knows? Honestly, it's shocking how fast it's improved. But for now, I think that humans, like a taste is really hard for AI to replace. It's just like there's some things, almost always that it comes back with, where you're like, no, like, you know what I mean? Like obviously wrong, kind of, or obviously in bad taste, or like, just off. And so I think it really needs a human eye for now and for the foreseeable future. But I mean, I'm prepared to eat my words that at some point, maybe not even that distant future, that's going to change. But for now, I don't see it. I really don't. I would never put AI, out in front of a client without like heavily like reviewing.
Without reviewing it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nate. This has been a wonderful talk.
Thanks for having me.